afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast State of the Balance with me, your host, Imperial Dane, Master of Propaganda. We're off here to another video sort of covering how things have sort of progressed the last month in terms of metagame and balance. I mean, there haven't really been any patches. Of course, we're getting a notable one, of course, right next week, Tuesday, the 23rd. So, of course, there's going to be some changes there, but also sort of how has the metagame sort of progressed in the meanwhile. I mean, again, sort of usual here that sort of making any sort of greater progress tends to be the Wehrmacht, and yes, again, it has been so for the last few months. It's sort of getting further out in terms of strategies. It's less and less just sort of relying on call-ins. Of course, there's some that's still doing that, some that folks are still relying on close airs, but again, the numbers are dropping. We're seeing more MGs used, we're seeing mortars, we're seeing snipers, sort of seeing a bit of greater deal usage. We're also seeing a bit of an old strategy from companies which surprisingly hasn't seen much usage, but it's sort of now gaining ground of basically going for tier 1, then skipping tier 2, going for tier 3, and sort of rushing out some armor there. So, I mean, that's also nice to see, though. So far, it's sort of more reliant on, you know, just Panzer IIIs, less the other things, but still, there is some progress there for the Wehrmacht. In terms of sort of doctrine used, it's a bit more all over the place. There's lightning wall, we're seeing mechanized assault. Obviously, still, of course, might see a bit of a drop there after the patch. Close air support. And, you know, a bunch of others. Ostrom is also making a bit of a comeback. So, I mean, there are some options there. There are some options there overall in that regard. Wehrmacht playing in that regard is probably some of the more varied at the moment. Although, I mean, there are some things when they do go to, for the likely mechanized complete folks, we can almost guess they're going for a 2-2-1. I mean, tier 2 play for the Wehrmacht right now is not the strongest, and certainly also some of the weaker parts there. Though, of course, that's also partly due to maybe the parts of it needing up still a buff. For example, Panzer and this would stand a bit more out. And the half-track 251 there with the flamethrower could also, you know, use a bit more. But over in terms of how the metagame has sort of proceeded, that's really it. The Americans sort of still sort of have made a shift again. And again, it tends to sort of be very much a block-like shift. I mean, there's some that's still going for the lieutenant, but still overall there's an increasing number of American players who basically go straight for the captain, using them as sort of anti-tank, as it's sort of guard versus light vehicles, and then rushing straight for tier 4, for example. Infantry company also become very popular lately, with Browning light machine guns sort of increase their firepower there. Though that's the reason I've actually seen BAR sort of growing a bit more in popularity as well, so who knows how this will actually work out. Otherwise, it's very much sort of captain focused. Lieutenant sort of dropped a bit, though again, we are still seeing it. In most cases, M20, though again, rare cases might be in a half-track. No rule in that regard. American play is still sort of varied, but again, it tends to sort of follow a large block for no sort of particular reason. I think it's sort of just more like flavor of the month, almost. You could sort of call the American sort of metagame at the moment more than anything. But overall, there's sort of some things that are staying out there. Of course, with the patch out there, I mean, they're probably sort of going to sort of keep up with captain there, use more stewards, and it'll be much more nasty on them. And of course, in that regard, mine is going to be more important for the Wehrmacht, and maybe we'll see more tier 1, tier 3 rushes, at least for maybe sort of an early Stug, which of course is Stug there being sort of more potent, and I imagine we will see more Stugs, but we're also seeing sort of more aggressive further strategies there from the Wehrmacht, also perhaps more MG42s, now they can sort of counter blobs even better. So I mean, there's some options there, and again, I imagine Wehrmacht will be sort of the one sort of taking the most out of the patch, despite them receiving the least changes directly. I think they'll sort of be the ones who actually sort of well, again, keep sort of expanding the metagame for their own faction. With the Americans, it'll probably still be sort of very much a flavor of the month thing that sort of keeps up there, because again, more stewards and some other bits there. We'll probably also see more 50 calibers though. In that regard, you know, airborne could perhaps be a bit more popular to sort of go for the captain and use airborne to drop in a 50 caliber sort of support yourself there. I mean, that could very well be an option as well. Then we have the Oberkommando West. It's more or less the same. I mean, there's been a slight change now. It's Battle Group Headquarters, Mechanized Regiment, Flak Half-Track, Jagdpanzer in most cases. Again, it also tends to more largely move in blocks, but again, it's sort of much slower. It's flavor of the season almost, or flavor of the decade, if you're sort of getting a bit tongue-in-cheek. And that regard, I mean, it's not really progressing well. It's still sort of largely reliant on lots of Volksgrenadiers of Panzerschrecks, or it's Jägers, or it's some other kind of infantry. Mobile lines largely dropped out there alongside the Schwerpanzer quarters, which is seen increasingly little. Though, of course, there was still some mutants. We're also seeing sort of a bit more of an increase toward people actually playing for King Tigers, if they can get away with it. And overall, sort of the primary sort of popular doctrine is pretty much Luftwaffe, with a sort of small amount of fortification, and Scam in sort of a nice sort of second place after Luftwaffe Ground Forces. Elite armor, as usual, is not very elite and pretty much trash for the larger parts. I mean, we probably won't be seeing that one much more either. And again, in terms of how they'll be affected by the changes there, not frightfully not much. I mean, there might be, of course, some more aggressive arcade method play, which of course might lead to some other bits, but overall, it's hard to say sort of what direction they'll be specifically taking beyond that. Though again, I imagine it's still going to be sort of spamming again, you know, even with the infinite half track sort of being made fuel-less. I don't think that's going to sort of lead to some hugely radically different strategies. Of course, I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong there, but we'll of course have to see. And of course we have the Surge. They're probably going to this one, so you know, again, they get the most change, but again, due to the way they've been playing, I think they're going to sort of have a harder time sort of adapting to them and getting the most out of them. I imagine there'll be a lot of complaints there. I mean, overall in terms of their metagame, again, that's also like why. I mean, it's pretty much just sort of guards, motor, shock rifle still. Very few players. I mean, we are seeing some usage there with the buildings. Some go Katrusas, some go for a T-34 or T-7, but still very much, you know, get a building, get out one unit, then wait for the rest. Though we are seeing a sort of slight increase of people actually getting HQ5s as well. I mean, there's some slight movement there. Slight, but overall it's sort of still very much, you know, the Soviet bloc, Stalinist, unyielding, unforgiving, unthinking almost. And again, I suspect very much they're going to perhaps be the ones sort of with the hardest time adapting to sort of the upcoming changes. And I also suspect we'll be seeing guards mode a lot more do the change there, until of course, you know, very much sort of hard countered probably with a pair of Stooks or something else there, of course. That might cause the sort of branch out a bit more. But again, I could be wrong there. But overall, not so much else sort of really sort of report on in terms of metagame and again balance. I mean, we got the patch up coming up, so of course, not so much else there to report. At least for the time being, of course, going to be interested how things actually will look in a month. After the patches have been out there for some time, and you know, we sort of get some play there with all the new changes. Hopefully something interesting and something exciting. Though, of course, we'll have to see how that actually works out. But again, that sort of rather covers it here for June. Not an awful lot happening, except maybe again for the Wehrmacht last year. I mean, there have been some smaller changes here and there again. Sort of responses happen sort of very slowly. And of course, we'll have to see if they won't react a bit faster though to these changes. I mean, there some of them are a bit bigger. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something from it. Hopefully, it gave some better ideas here for your own games, and hopefully in preparation here for the upcoming patch. You know, if it did, feel free to subscribe, tell your friends, share it with everyone. This is Imperial Ding. Cheers, and thank you. Thank you all for watching. Bye.